the first most important thing is having everybody know that they're being sold a lie. The thing that they're taught, that they're buying day to day to day, day in, day out, is bullshit. If you know me, I almost never swear. So let's keep it. It is bullshit.
Hey everybody, Ryan Hodge here from the realty firm Ryan Hodge Coaching and Consulting, and this is another episode of Rise Up, a new project of mine where we are featuring some inspirational and motivational people that are doing great things and bringing you what is real in an industry that is crying for that the most right now. And it is an honor to welcome my friend and colleague for many years, Sara Kalke. Sara Kalke is consistently among the top agents in her market, consistently selling over 100 homes per year as an individual agent, not a big, massive team. She also coaches, speaks, contributes to other human beings at a huge level. And as always, my friend, it's an honor to have a conversation.
Thanks for having me. It's like to be here.
So tell us what's been going on with you over the last 2 years. I mean, I think that most people that, follow along with me know you as well, and know just how hugely successful you've been. But, we've been through a couple of years almost of pandemic, and, where have things been at? It's nice to catch up and hear what you're doing now.
When we first started chatting, I said, my life has been kind of like the caterpillar that crawls into the cocoon and turns into complete mush and, disintegrates and then becomes a new being. So it kind of sums up my last couple of years, but I think it will sum up a lot of the last year and a half of people who are watching and listening to this podcast as well.
Sure. So when you talk about the cocoon, there's the business dynamic, which I know that you're consistently, from an observation, committed to excellence and, always improving your craft for your clients. You're very, very people-oriented and client-focused, which I think is what's led to such a hugely successful business. Is that still the goal? Because I know that you coach, you speak, you've got, a wonderful family and horses and everything else, but, what's the main focus right now? Or is it just the ongoing balance through all of what the world has been lately?
Well, my canned answer for what my mission has been as a real estate agent has been to sell the greatest number of houses in the least amount of time with the best possible customer experience. Mm-hmm. That was, if I was to sum up my business mission, that's what it would be every day. This is what I want to do, be efficient, really, most homes in the least amount of time, and do it in a way that feels as good as possible. That's been my whole goal in real estate. Every move that I've made on the chessboard, meeting and networking with other agents was a strategic business move, because relocation clients come in for a weekend and buy a house. And who doesn't want a client that buys a house in 2 days versus the people that you stalk and chat with and you show houses to, and, you dilly around for 3 years. And then they call you and they're like, oh, we went to an open house yesterday. We bought a house. Aren't you happy for us? Right? Like two different business strategies. Yeah. So everything I've done, every step of the way since I was a real estate assistant back in the day, even being an assistant, was how can I become the best possible agent, sell the most houses in the least amount of time? I realized, I need to pay my dues. I need to be an apprentice before I can be out there being a master. And I'd rather hit the ground running with all this training in the back end versus being on the struggle bus for 5 years like most agents are, right? Mm-hmm. So everything I did was very strategic. My goal in life from that strategy was really to be successful, like most people, but how success is measured has really dramatically changed. And I think that's something that's probably changed for a lot of people who are watching, who are, listening to the podcast, is they've really gone from success is titles, achievement, stuff, labels, what circles you're in, all of that stuff was like, that is success. And I bought the message of, privileged patriarchy, whatever you want to say, the establishment, the bro culture, all that stuff, I bought in. I was like, if I am number one, if I have like a tagline, just like the intro, like if I sell 100 homes a year, blah, 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 then I'm cool.
Yeah.
Then I'm accepted. Then I'm worthy. Then, I am worthy of love. Then I'm somebody who's like somebody. And that wasn't just conditioning from my childhood. It's like every single message in our world, right? Is like, you are worthy if, we can name all the things, right? Like if you have abs, if you have, now it's like changed to a butt, like now it's like, if you have a great butt, then you're worthy of love. If you're, consistently moderately underweight for women, that's a huge one. You have, the perfect hair and the perfect skin. And then in our business, real estate, talk about a weird world that we live in. Like it's like we talk about like the income that we make. Like it's just a normal thing that people talk about, like our awards, like we get introduced by our production. But, like I always say, I knew that I was in the wrong rooms eventually when you came in and it was as if you had sharpied onto your forehead your production volume, and then you were ranked by the other people in the room of how worthy you were of their time and their conversation by the Sharpie on your forehead.
Oh yeah.
It's not at all about who you are.
No.
It's about what you are and what you do and what's in your bank account. And that's really great for the world that we all started with, but that's not where we're going in this life. Our mission in life is not to have a padded bank account, because we all know, the Bible verse, what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world but lose his own soul? That is exactly how I felt going into the cocoon. I had a lot. I had speaking gigs. I had a podcast. I had friends who were like big shots and CEOs, and I had abs, and I had all the things, all the what's that a person should have. And I share this picture now. I force myself every time I speak to share a photo of me at the top of a hike in Utah called Angel's Landing. It's a very dangerous hike at the end. And I won't get into the details, but a bunch of stuff happened on the hike. And I went from being someone that was always looking to others to lead me, to being put in a position at the top of this really challenging hike. People die there all the time. It's like super sketch. And you get up to the top and you like scramble up this thing. And then it's like 2,000 foot straight drop down on either side of this landing. Like it's this little precipice that comes out, but it's like thousands of feet high. And the last phase of this hike is that you have to go from the main, like strenuous, but like super chill walk up to the top to scrambling on these like chains. And if you let go, you could literally fall and die. And we're almost all the way to the top. We're done the easy hike. And there was all this publicity and all this stuff and all this like posturing about, what a great hike this was going to be. And the people who dropped out got shamed. And it's really kind of, tough. And we get there and it's like, no, Sarah, you take everybody up. And so I did. Because my heart is always like, these people, they're not hiker. I have never been on this hike, but I used to be a climber back in the day. And so, I feel comfortable in those scenarios and I feel comfortable helping people. If push comes to shove, that's who I am. I want to help people have these great experiences. And, so I literally walked all the people behind me through this by step, like, okay, hold this chain, put your foot here. Are you good? Yeah, you got this. And, and they started panicking. I was like, hey, we're good. Let's just stop a minute. Let's take a breath. Like, you can do this. Talk them through, got them to the top of, the end of this hike, which is super sketchy. And there was like a little extra outcropping, rock kind of formation. And it went like up higher and it dropped straight down below. and because I'm a nerd and I like heights and I like climbing, I climb up on top of it and everyone's like looking up at me. And I was just sitting there by myself, my legs crossed. My husband, like, of course, he's a photographer. He was with me. And we brought like snacks for everybody and water for everybody and all this stuff because we knew, so we're like handing out all the water bottles and stuff at the top. And I was just sitting there and everything changed in that moment. I realized that, we were just talking about this before, that leaders don't lead through shame. They don't lead through any sort of being separate or elite or different. They lead by what they do when things are uncomfortable, what they do when they're afraid and yet have people looking to them. Do they show up and help people and put their needs above their own? And it's okay to say, hey, this is out of my element. As well. That's okay. Like that's a leader move, is saying, hey, I'm scared. I'm not comfortable. I can't lead you. That's okay. And it was just happened to be my skill set at that moment that I felt very comfortable in that scenario. But the shift really happened in my mind of realizing that there's a difference between elitism, elite leadership, and servant leadership. And my chapter in that world of trying to be elite closed in that very moment. There, it took some trickling and it took, a while for me to decide, okay, this isn't my main life. This isn't the number one thing, but all of that stuff that I wanted so badly, all the achievement, all the labels, all the, the cool things suddenly became as unimportant as the stuff, right at the bottom. I could look all the way down and, and you see people and they look like tiny little ants. It was like, I was just instantly that far from all of it.
Yeah.
And that was about 8 months before COVID happened. So, it was kind of like, it was a shift. And then when COVID happened, I think for everybody listening to this, a lot of things shifted. And it felt like we had two roads. We had the road of the people, and that's why it was so polarizing. We had the road of people who were like, sell harder, like reach out to everybody and push. And there was a lot of the kind of, I call it now like a lot of bro mentality, which is not to say that it's male or female. It's just very like kind of this machismo thing that's going on in leadership circles where everything has to be 10x and everything is do it harder and push and battle and fight and crush. And, all these words that are were so part of me started to just seem weird, like even weirder than they did before. I was like, in this very tumultuous time, why are we going to war with each other? Why are we battling? Why are we name calling and shaming people if their focus is not making more money? This is like a worldwide crisis where we didn't even know at that time if we were, what was going to happen to our loved ones, to the elderly, to our family, to our children. And it seemed weird that money would yet still be the flag that was being flown. Like, watch your money, go make more money, work harder right now for money. Instead, I stood up and I said, in a very like, it was a notable for me Facebook Live where I was just like, hey, I don't think that has to be your priority right now.
Sure.
You can snuggle at home with your family for a little while. You can reach out to people as people, not as objects of business growth.
Right.
Like you don't like have to do that. I know that it's a thing to need money. So like, yeah, we're still going to have to deal with this income. And I'm not saying like stop working and panic and, run around like a chicken with your head cut off. But the shift really happened before that. And then the journey through that has been, if we're so used to leadership that says, go do battle, go fight, go crush, go, think of all of our analogies, boots on the ground. In the trenches, it's all war. What's the opposite? What's a life? What's leadership look like for all the people who don't have an alternative? We have a very, very strong voice on the one hand, but there's kind of a vacuum on the other side that says motivation doesn't have to be through shame.
Sure.
Think of the posts that you read that are supposed to be motivational. Just as an example, I saw one the other day that said, "You are not overwhelmed, you are lazy." This was shared by like a real human being.
Yeah.
And, I was like, okay. And then underneath it says all the things like get a day timer, wake up earlier, and like all tactical strategies that work if you are a robot living in a vacuum. And the only thing that you require in order to go from like air quotes not successful to air quotes success is just a few tactics, without realizing at all that we are human beings with different states of privilege, which is very important to acknowledge. Not everybody was born with the ability to just motivate themselves out of poverty or out of trauma or out of disability or out of, racism or sexism, or like, it's a very privileged space to look at the people who are houseless on the street and say, why don't they just get a job?
Right.
They are lazy. That's shame motivation. We are trained as this as we're kids, right? You want to clean your room? Need your kid to clean your room? What do? You start with, please clean your room. And then they don't do it. So you're like, you're never going to grow up to be anything. You're going to become worthless. You're useless. Look at how horrible this is. Nothing is going to come of you. You are lazy. Therefore, you're successful, is the message that we get all the time. And we thrive on it. We pay so much money for people to tell us we suck. We thrive on, right? Like we are like bees to honey. We're like, this is what we need. We think that what we need is to be beat on in order to be motivated, right? It's like the carrot and the stick. And we're just like, oh yeah, we like the stick. We're used to it. Yeah. Like every motivational speech is like a halftime locker room chat from like the mean coach. What we don't have a lot of, or what we make fun of, or what we think is weak or stupid. This was what I was trained in my old world. It was weak and stupid to feel feelings. It was weak and stupid to be vulnerable, to be real, to truly care about people was somehow flawed. You were flawed. You were, it should be a revolving door. Yeah. It shouldn't be real relationships, especially with yourself. So the alternative to all the shame and all the everything else is, and all of this stuff because you've been on the same journey as me, and I think all of us are, is self-compassion, self-love, noticing, mindfulness, being not just in the present, but like the present and immediate future focused. That's my favorite. Truly not being separate. There's a lack of elitism in equality. No one group is better than another group. Your income does not, there's no Sharpies in that land. There's no Sharpie of labels and all that stuff. It is a true space. I know it sounds very like utopian, but it's a true space of love versus a space of judgment and fear. So that's been the long journey. It took breaking down. It took some very painful moments, obviously, where you believe yourself to be one thing and then you have to like become something else. But it's still on the journey and learning a lot, and definitely have not figured anything out or everything out. I figured out a few things for me that work, and definitely not criticizing the people in the other world, because I needed to be there to help myself and to now be able to help other people get out from under the thumb of that. I wouldn't know how to do that had I not gone through that whole painful journey. So I'm grateful to it for the lessons I've learned, for sure.
It's funny what we learn along the way. For a long time I wanted to just, it was always number one, right? I want 100 homes a year. That was number one at one point. Then it was, the office and then speaking and coaching. And every time I hit number one, it didn't really matter. Yeah, it feels nice for 5 seconds. And then
Mhm.
if you're not solid, it goes away pretty quick and you're on to the next. I had a meeting with a broker here in my market, or one of the largest offices in the city. After a good couple that worked with me left, and they're good friends. We remain friends. They're highly productive. They left, and in this large office, I said to him, "It's got to sting sometimes after all these years when good people leave." And he looked at me and he said, "We want 300 agents, and it doesn't matter. The faces are always going to change, and that's just the way it is." So you talked about that revolving door.
Yeah.
And I just said, that is so not the business that I want.
Yeah.
I want the relationships that last, whether people move on and they evolve in their own journey. And I mean, these guys open their own boutique company, but I never want to look at my business like that. And I know that, I was heavily criticized. And you and I would joke about, me being transactional years and years ago. What a great learning experience on how not to be in sales, though. And it
Mhm.
applies to that leadership. Yet it seems right now the messaging is exactly what you said: just grow big, grind, hustle, 10x. I just don't know that that's going to solve any, worldly worldly challenges where the world really needs them, more right now.
There's a duality to it.
Hmm.
The the women that I work with, and I, primarily my coaching base and my people are women. Um, they often need some motivation. Like, action is a huge thing in getting out of poverty, getting
Hmm.
out of, this cycle that a lot of real estate agents are in. We have to remember most real estate agents are not making massive profit every year.
No.
They're on the struggle
Yeah.
bus.
Sure.
Most of them need some action. And that is why a lot of the 10x grow, push, grind, um, getting sworn at, all that stuff can be helpful, because, it's like being at the gym and your trainer is like yelling at you and pushing you to go faster and push harder is sometimes helpful, but it won't last.
Mm.
It will help you through the middle part of that workout, but it's not going to get you to come back.
Yeah.
When you got yelled at the last time, maybe you get yelled at in the middle. Like, it's a motivation sandwich where it's like, number one, you're worthy. I know you can do this. It's going to be hard. And then in the middle, you're pushing them a little bit. There's a bit of push, I think, in our world that's necessary still, where we have to kind of be like, okay, like, let's do it. What's your action plan? Let's keep you going forward. But there is never judgment, humiliation, secret sharing, blaming. None of that can happen in the middle. It has to be very, very safe
Sure.
in order to come out after the workout, after the push, after, you making those calls, and really truly being able to move forward as somebody who can then go and lead other people.
Hmm.
Um, I've lost what we were even talking about. The
Well,
question.
I think we're talking about leadership, but when you talk
Yeah.
about women, and I know that for both men and women, I mean, self-image and the way that people look is such a big focus, right? But I always
Mhm.
look back, and I've learned it along the way with people that I've now gotten to work with. I mean, Les Brown, somebody that I did an interview with and I've spent some time with, top motivational speaker in the world, or considered among
Yeah.
one of the greats of our time. Well, he doesn't have a six-pack. Oprah Winfrey is the wealthiest woman on the planet, or was the last time that I checked. She's not lean and mean at all times. And so when you work with people, like, how do you get them to realize or recognize or support them in, understanding themselves and what works for them versus that, the thumb, as you called it, or, you have to be with this one way or else you're not worthy.
Mhm. Can I swear on this?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I
So
can't because it gets me in trouble with real estate councils and things like that. But
I don't usually swear, but the first most important thing is having everybody know that they're being sold a lie. The thing that they're taught, that they're buying day to day to day, day in, day out, is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
If you know me, I almost never swear.
Mm-hmm.
So let's keep it. It is bullshit that you should be X BMI. Did you know that BMI, like the body mass index, was created by industry players?
Yeah.
And like they want to make money off of you. You're actually healthier. You're statistically a lower chance of major illness if you are moderately overweight versus being moderately underweight.
Mm-hmm.
Yet especially as women, what are we supposed to be? Oh yeah, moderately underweight. You're supposed to be a clothes hanger. This is what you're supposed to be. So first thing is use facts and have people acknowledge that what they're being sold is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's an absolute bullshit lie. Yep. And they should be a little bit pissed about it. Sure. All of us, women, everybody should be pissed that we have been buying into a lie, that the people we are putting on pedestals are probably no better than we are.
Yep.
And once you start to realize that, then the less than starts to go away. Mm-hmm. When we're in a world where we are propping up the pedestals, we're saying that this person's better because they have X Instagram followers, X abs, X income, X whatever. Think of the people on stages. And often the stuff that they say is the exact opposite of what they're doing in real life when you actually get to know them.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have to start to take everything and say, okay, like realistically, what is it that I want out of life? Even, what are the things that I want? Yep. So step one, breaking down the lack of confidence, the shame, the embarrassment that really gets in the way of action is first realizing you're being sold a lie. Mm-hmm. What you think that you're supposed to be that's holding you back is all bullshit anyway. So when you start to see that, then you picking up your phone and you doing your market update video, real estate podcast still, yeah. When you see your face in the reflection, you stop being like, oh, I'm not good enough. My hair's not cool enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not X enough. Starts to go away. Sure. Because you start looking at that and you hear it and you're like, oh yeah, bullshit. Mm-hmm. I am worthy. We're all worthy. Yeah. Of having a voice, of having an opinion, of being out there as a business owner. Mm-hmm. And often the people who can help others the most are the ones who aren't thinking about themselves at all. No. They're the ones who are actually doing our job as real estate agents, as fiduciaries, which we so frequently forget. We don't have like the fiduciary awards, like who did best by their clients award. We have who did best by themselves awards.
So true.
So then who's training us? Oh yeah, the people who do best by themselves. And they're saying, oh, here's how you get this edge. Here's how you sneak people into saying yes when they're really not sure. How much of what we're trained and we're talking about is just about our objectives, not even treating people as people. It's treating them as a path to get what we want, which is money, fame, success, being rich, hot, and famous. How messed up is that? So going back to all, like, especially, the women in my group and the people in my world. And, I do have some men coaching clients, but mostly women. It's kind of like getting where you fit in a little bit. I can't speak to your experience, but I can definitely speak to the experience of anybody who shows up thinking that they're not good enough, that they're lacking confidence, that they know they could be great if they let go of the story they were telling themselves that keeps them in that cycle of anxiety and stress and lack of confidence. Mostly remembering they're not the first one that told us that. It's not their fault they think that. It's a big pile of bullshit that they've been fed and taught and they live in. And there's a book, I can't remember which book it is, but it talks about your marinade. Like you as a piece of meat, which I love, cowgirl. I love meat. So, you and your marinade is your marinade your whole entire life is that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not this enough, you're not, whatever. And so when people start to see it as, oh, well, that really wasn't me anyway, then they can start to break free. And people now they're coming out after, years of working together, and they're making the videos and they're setting boundaries with people. They are saying no to clients. And what more of a powerful thing, really, where you can show up and you can say no to that question that you don't want to say yes to. You can start to have better habits, like answering a question with a question, rather, really have the maturity and the confidence to do a good job for people, because it's not about you, and you're able to ask them those uncomfortable questions, because you're not really you're kind of attached and detached at the same time. You're like there, but you're not totally wrapped up in it as much as, you're like, yeah, I'm here in principle to do a great job for you, but doing a great job for you might mean that I don't actually represent you.
Sure.
Might mean, you can't get that when your whole training and your conditioning is say yes to everybody.
No.
Do everything for everybody, care for everybody, be everything to everybody, be pretty for everybody, be, helpful and wonderful and kind and smiling and nice and lovely, when what we're actually describing as the ideal woman, the ideal person, is often somebody who's in a high state of emotional shutdown. Have people who are in, most of the male ego training is people who are in a high fight state. Yeah. Think of all of the people that we look to as leaders, and they're often flexing. You ever thought about this? They're flexing. This is a thing. They're showing I am strong. They're often in anxiety fight mode. Right. They're like, I'm going to take you on. I'm going to crush you. I'm going to take you out. Right. I'm not like that. Don't be triggered if you see. I'm just pretending. I'm acting.
We got
that mode, right? Of I'm going to cut you down. It's an anxiety triggered state of fight.
Sure.
Then we have, flight mode, which is where a lot of us go. We try and escape. We don't want to be in it. We have freeze mode, which is overwhelm. Where we're totally overwhelmed. You're not lazy if you're overwhelmed. Okay. No. You're just overwhelmed. It's a perfectly legitimate thing to be. The solution to your overwhelm is not a day planner. It's usually meditation, therapy. It might be getting some professional help from a therapist, not a coach. Sorry, they're two different things.
Sure,
if you're overwhelmed because of trauma, you need a trauma-informed therapist who's an expert, not a unlicensed, untrained real estate strategy coach. Yeah. Hey, one of the first things I do, and a lot of people who come to me, I'm like, hey, have you considered therapy? Because I feel like that's maybe more of a conversation. We talk real estate strategy. I'm like a real estate strategist. I know how to do it. I'm in the, in the trenches. See, I catch myself using the lingo, but I do the real estate. That we can talk about. The childhood trauma is not my place. I don't know how to do that properly. It would be dangerous and reckless of me to do that. And the last one, so we have fight, which we celebrate, freeze, which we shame, flight, freeze, which we also shame. We blame those people. Oh, you're frozen. You're acting small. You're doing all of this stuff. We just shame them. And then we have fawn, which I think is interesting, which is very female, where which is trained to the women in our society, I should say,
right.
Which is, when our voice gets really high, how can I help you? Oh, you're really unhappy with me now. Oh, let me just do more for you and make it better. Oh, you'd like, me to charge you less? No problem. I would be happy to. How much of my customer service life have I spent in this very high, very pleasant voice?
So true.
A lot. When people are pissed at me, that's where I go, because it's safe. Think of how many women speakers you see on stage. How many of them are in fight mode? Very few.
Yeah.
We're not allowed. How many leader women are posing and posturing into you in their social, and you're following them for it? You're not, because we're trained to follow the nice women, the pretty women, the ones who aren't threatening, the ones who tell you you can do everything in life, right? And as soon as we get serious with people, they get threatened, they feel like it's horrible. So how do we take all of those things, like all of those stress responses, and start to kind of knock them down one by one? Noticing, calling it for what it is, telling the truth, getting off the pedestals,
Totally.
and just realizing, hey, for me to be extremely successful on my terms, for my family to have all the financial freedom we need, for me to be able to go and have the great experiences I want to have with my family, for me to be able to live all my dreams of being a cowgirl, I need maybe 10 sales a month.
Sure. Yep.
10 sales a month is awesome. That's like a great benchmark. My current benchmark is like 2 sales a week. This is like my goal. Every week that I exist in real estate life, I'm like, I got to try and sell 2 houses this week.
Great.
This is my whole world. Yeah. Not, I need to sell 90 bajillion houses every single week. That's like where I was. My hair legitimately started falling out in that world. So do not recommend. Don't do that. 2 houses a week out of, in my market in Edmonton, there's about 300 to 400 houses that sell in a week, and I need 1 to 2 of them. 1,500 that sell per month. I mean, a lot of people do these calculations, but they're really helpful. 1,500 that sell in a month, and if I get 10 of those, I've been amazing. Like I get everything I need in my life plus more.
Sure.
Not so ego-y. It's not so complicated. It's not so much about anything really besides me doing a good job for my people and being responsible and being, a good steward of the process. Once we start getting all of that other bullshit off the table, it starts to be a lot easier. If you're like, hey, my goal is to sell 2 houses a month, puts things in a lot of a different perspective than when you're listening to all the speakers who are talking about their existence way over here, and your existence is way over here, and you don't even want, like, if someone paid you all the money in the world, you would not want their life, and yet you still feel bad for like not having their life when you don't even want it. It's like, but yet they're the ones on the stage. So we go and we feel bad,
and that really is the conditioning that we're in right now in our world, right? And I know for certain, I mean, we've got some small teams within the company. I mean, small teams, like husband and wife, couple agents that work with them. They live amazing lives. They would never want, big brokerage. They would never want mega team. And I look at their bank accounts because of the way that, it's run, and I go, there's something to be said for, what they're doing. And I've known this for a long time now, but what is it about, this, reaching the number one in the world that's just, so sought after? Is it just because it's healthy and it's an accomplishment? Because I also look at the stress that comes along with that. And I don't think people do talk about stress enough and what that can do physically, mentally, and spiritually if we're not careful with it. What's your take? Because you've stayed consistent with this message in many ways. Yes, different periods of growth, but not only a quality client experience, but a quality life for yourself and your family versus just number one this, number one that. How do you do it?
Well, I think a lot of it has been all of the things that happened in my childhood that kind of made me into who I am, and an extremely stubborn version of who I am, which is that I will not waver on everything that I do is to build a life that is worth living for me.
Sure.
I think everybody has a different version of a life that's worth living for them. And I give, big props to the people who run the big mega teams, because the mega teams can, and I've seen it, enable people, especially new real estate agents, to have an absolute financial transformation in their lives.
Yes, totally.
And they can create that probably faster than an agent could on their own. It's more like having a job than it is like having a business. They're two different things, but I definitely will never, say bad things about those people, because I know what they do while they're on the journey to be number one is actually empowering a lot of single moms who I've met, a lot of, people of color who wouldn't otherwise be in real estate, who wouldn't have access to make 6-figure incomes off of a 2-month course. You think about it, and they have the lead feed that, it's expensive to be part of teams. There's there's components there that really work. So I'll never, ever say that they're all bad and I'm all good. And doing it the independent way is good and that way's bad. What I've always been about, and you're right, that I've always stuck to is, number one, I wanted to be a cowgirl when I grew up. When I was a little girl, I desperately wanted to be a cowgirl or a pilot, actually, when I grew up. And most of my life, for better or for worse, I have been on my own, fighting my own fight day after day after day. Since I was 17 years old, I put my own food on my own table. And even much before that, I took care of myself. I took care of other people. A lot of people like me come to this place through hard times. I would be what one would call gritty by the definition, right? I'd get introduced as like, Sarah's a machine, Sarah's gritty, Sarah's relentless. These are words that I've heard over the years. That isn't necessarily always a good thing. We worship grit. We say it's a great thing, but think of what grit is. Gritting your teeth sucks.
Stress.
It's stress. It's harshness. It is the thing that makes gritty people is usually hardship. It's hard times that makes you so extremely self-sufficient and resilient that yes, you end up on stages sometimes, or yes, you end up being able to help people. But it's not always the easiest thing, and it's not something to always aspire to. Yes, in life, we have to take difficult situations and create great outcomes out of them. That's where you can make a lot of money.
Totally.
The greatest profit comes from the greatest human transformations. And that stuff, it's true. Like when you can help people, when you can withstand a huge amount of stress, and that's grit. That's the stuff that helps people forward. My mission has always been just who I am. And I can't really tell you it's, I created this grand vision. It's just, I'm somebody that figures stuff out. I'm really good at problem solving. I am that way, partly because of experience, partly because of privilege, and partly because of just opportunity in my life. And it's worth saying it privilege, because not everybody can work hard and become fairly wealthy, right? The grand scheme of things, right? I was able to do that. Even though, sometimes in university, I was, food insecure, as one would say. I legitimately didn't have enough food to eat. But while I was getting a classical music degree, is that really sing me a song?
Yeah, totally.
Come on. None of my hard things have been that hard in the grand scheme of the world. So yeah, I can get on stages and talk about I can talk about the loss of my first child, my daughter. And that's a real hard thing, it's different than a lot of other people's hard thing, but that's my hardest thing. But even that, those experiences, I don't stand up on stage and I'm like, well, you have to go through hardship in order to sell 100 houses a year. It's like 100 houses a year is somehow the thing is living, I think, a no regret life where you can look back at the end of every day, every week, every month, and not regret your actions, your thoughts, your spiritual relationship. It's where you kind of keep the train on the tracks. And your tracks, we were just talking about this, where you have principles and core values and you feel like, yeah, I stuck to those. And my principles and core values largely came from a faith upbringing. I grew up in a very, very, I wouldn't say religious, I would say spiritual family. We went to church 5 times a week. Our summer holidays were Bible camp, and our recreational activities were bringing in speakers. So we would like, that's all we did.
It's intense.
It's very intense.
Yeah.
Good and bad, of course.
Sure.
But I always joke that we are so fundamentalist that we like out fundamentalists ourselves out of the fundamentalist church and out of that world. Because my dad would be like, we learned so much that we'd be sitting in church and the preacher would say something. And because we dedicated our whole lives to learning, in my world, in the Bible, I'm not going like super Bible with this. So if you hear this, like, don't get triggered, hopefully, or stressed. I know even that word can be triggering for people. So, we learned so much. We spent all of our time talking about it, that if somebody would say things like, oh, you have to be separate, you can't, be in friendship even with people who are, of a different sexual orientation. That was big in the 90s.
Right.
Was like, oh, you can't be friends with gay people, God forbid, because they're worldly and they're bad. We would be like, but that's not what Jesus said. That's not what the Bible said. That's actually, here's 28 verses and here's a Hebrew version and here's this and here's this. They all say that that's actually the opposite of what the point of all of this is. And also remember, like, all of Jesus's friends, oh yeah, they were all the outcasts. They were not the elite. They were not, if you go back, like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they weren't all the people who were so-called on pedestals in the elite and throwing stones at everybody and judging and hating the people who came and helped people for free because they wanted the donations. They wanted the money in exchange for helping people. So what did they do? They killed off, literally, all the people who came to be of genuine service. That's how you know someone's heart.
Yeah.
Are they giving in exchange for cash? Are they your friend, in exchange for money? Yeah, they're not your friend.
No,
they are a very sneaky business. Where, and yeah, you can be friends with your clients. I'm not saying that you can't, but we have to kind of go back. And I think because I had that foundation, it definitely didn't keep me on the path. I have made so many mistakes up and down. I've, gone on bunny trails. I've, like more than probably anybody, because I had no excuse, because I, had this foundation of really thinking and knowing a lot about right and wrong and principles and core values my whole life. And yet still I, fall off the track all the time.
Sure.
But really my mission in life has always been to live a life of no regrets.
I love it. So good.
Yeah.
So good. Thank you for taking the time today. It's always 100% enlightening, and I always love hearing where you're at in your own journey, and those core values shine through, my friend. So I believe that this industry and the people that follow along, and with me, we're just crying for more of people like you, the real authentic deal that are here to serve and support, and you just continue to do that. So as always, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
As always impressed. What is coming up next for you? How do people reach you for training, or if they want to get involved with what you're doing?
Well, I'll be launching some more one-on-one training come September. We are having the best summer ever, the summer of making memories. My daughter's 8. So my mission is making memories. That's what this summer is. So I'm not taking on any extra people until September.
Nice.
But please reach out. The easiest is just at Sara Kalke on Instagram, or message me on Facebook. Those are probably the simplest. I will be opening up one-on-one spots again in September. And then I do a group coaching program. It's called Shine. It's all about helping people truly like shine through, let your light shine. And it's a online course / live training / group training. It's really just a wonderful community. We've, been on a journey, some of us for 2 years, 3 years now, like a long, long time. And it is, you get the training, but then you get the implementation. It's not just about like, hey, let me dump a bunch of info on you like you've got from a lot of other places that you're not actually going to do anything about. We also, walk through getting everything done and implementing stuff. And I think that's why it's been so transformational for people. Is it's not just like stuff, it's the support that keeps going and helps people like truly shine through. And there's the program. Yeah.
So good. So good. I will post links if I can get a link to anything that you do have. So we'll touch base after this. But everybody, Sara Kalke, thank you so much for being on the Rise Up podcast. Stay tuned for some other guests that we have coming up. And as always, continue to stay humble and thrive inside of your business and your life. Talk real soon.